Thank you.
लाइट बंद करवाइए। हो गया। वेट। हाँ आ जा। वेट। रुक जा।
Let's focus on selling the drug here in India first, but at the same time I will separately talk to you about it. Well, the standard of care as per the international standards is cleaning the wound twice with saline water, removing the necrotic tissue around the wound if there is any, and then bandaging the wound in a moist environment. This is all that is done as standard of care. More importantly, the doctors prescribe that the blood glucose levels have to be controlled very strictly. Otherwise, the already existing diabetic foot ulcer worsens very rapidly. So the idea is control the blood sugar and do this bandaging twice, as just I mentioned.
So like how many days this?
This you have to continue doing. The standard of care you have to keep doing because the wound doesn't heal. That is the problem. So that is just wound management, so that it doesn't get to amputation stage. With the drug Diulcus, the idea is to completely heal the wound, so that it doesn't, the question of worsening and leading to amputation does not arise.
So is there antibiotic topicals don't work here?
No. So there are, diabetic foot ulcers, when they happen, they are not infected. But as the wound remains open because it is not getting closed, it's prone to infection. When it gets infected, then the all the anti-infectives etc. are used, but they don't heal the wound. See, the whole idea is if you keep the wound open, it will always be open to infection. Idea is to heal the wound, and this drug is expected to do that.
And at what stage it leads to gangrene, sir?
Well, infected wound which is not treated ultimately leads to gangrene.
See, what I was addressing about that is that you have to address the circulation, because it's basically neuropathy where sensation is gone, protective sensation. The patient doesn't realize that he is injuring himself. So there is a sensory component of the neuropathy. There is a motor component of the neuropathy. So the foot gets also deformed. So it is sort of this. So this creates a pressure at certain points in the foot, and that is the point where the most ulcers will take place on that part. So you have to relieve that pressure. Proper foot care also is becoming very important part of that. So pressure offloading becomes very important, and so gangrene occurs because there is no circulation. So dead tissue is called as gangrene. So when that part is there and it at the circulation is compromised, and it is infected, and that creates a great problem, and that is responsible for the amputation of these persons. So preventing this is very important. So like he mentioned, most of the local treatment, you have to take care of the wound. There are local antiseptics are there. You have to clean the wound daily. Twice daily dressing is required. So all this is very cumbersome. So it adds a lot of burden on the patient and relatives as well on the healthcare system. So it's very important that prevention is, that is why given much more emphasis there. So you inspect the peripheral pulsation, see how much there is circulation there. Like you check pulse in the hand. You can also check your downward pulses. You can do ultrasound and see how much is the circulation compromised. As I was mentioning, that we also have another drug which is being marketed by IPCA in another division called as Photoshoot All, which comes with the brand name Zilas, and that drug addresses the peripheral circulation as well. So it is important that we address the not just topical therapy is going to help. You may require even serious antibiotics and hospital admission to treat diabetic foot infection often, because you just seeing the site of the foot will frighten you that this is the type of complication which takes place. It's a very deadly complication, diabetic foot disease. And so whole emphasis on prevention, and then comprehensive management, manage blood glucose very well, manage the circulation to the extent you can, and if required, the vascular surgeons are also called in to help in those who have very severely compromised vascular functions. And a neuropathy part also you need to manage. So this is all comprehensive management, not just local management, is very important to understand.
So one more, like, at what price are you launching this, and how many, what is the time period for this therapy?
I'll let that question be answered by Mr. Ghui, but before that I just want to add one point, that post amputation the mortality rate is 40%. 5-year mortality after amputation is 40%. So you understand what is the level of risk that is involved in getting the foot amputated, right? So idea is that we, with the application of this drug, we do not let the diabetic foot ulcer reach the amputation level at all, because the wound gets closed.
Yeah, why this mortality is high? Because the person has peripheral artery disease, also is likely to have coronary artery disease. Okay?
Yes.
So this
Correct,
is where
correct.
this takes place.
Sir, if somebody has got the gangrene, then also this is going to help us?
No.
No, at the gangrene level, it will, you have to address that with the vascular surgeons and everything. But at the only ulcer level, where it is going to help.
And what are stage? What stage?
See, it should be meant for initial stages where there is no deep ulcer, there is no infection. So if infection is there, then infection should be treated first, and then this should be applied. So this is very, very important. One of the important precautions is that don't apply when the foot is infected. So first treat the infection, and once the infection has recovered, then only you apply this product at the ulcer.
We did a lot. We got a lot of support from the government, I must say. We initially got a BIPP grant. Then we got a soft loan to start with. At that time, this BIPP was not there, so we started way back in when the BIRAC started. And then we got a soft loan, which we repaid, of course. And after that, we got a grant in aid. So I would say about 20% of the cost of the entire project was supported by the government of India, which we have successfully delivered on.
Its mechanism, that how it helps in the overall in treatment.
Thank you, sir. What I would like to emphasize is that type 2 diabetes, which is basically occurring in adult onset diabetes, is the incidence in our country is increasing phenomenally. The just released ICMR in-depth guidelines, where survey was carried out throughout the country in all the states, it found that the incidence of type 2 diabetes in our country is currently more than 10 crores. So it is covering almost 11% of the Indian population. And this is exploding at a very faster rate. It was not expected to reach this fast. And prior to diabetes, we have a pre-diabetes status, where the glucose homeostasis is not normal, the glucose metabolism is not normal, and that incidence is, as was mentioned, was 15% of the Indian population has pre-diabetes. So together, if we take diabetes and pre-diabetes, 27% of our population is having this phenomenon. And why we are, why we would like to emphasize on this is that prevention is the need of the hour, because diabetes is not a just disease. It is high in carbohydrates, so we need to reduce the carbohydrates and have more protein. But we can't, because of non-vegetarian food we don't eat most of us. So we don't have that animal source here. So what source we have is, we have the vegetarian source. How you can improve the protein part, reduce the carbohydrate part, which is much more predominantly carbohydrate in India. And that's one, plus other physical activities, sedentary lifestyle, all these things have, and plus genetic proneness. So together everything has created this, type 2 diabetes havoc, and we need to address it very, very urgently.
To the therapy, like, it's there's so much, interventions that that is required. So how are you,
Presently we are all oral available, like for glimepiride, gliclazide, then DPP inhibitors, then DAPA, and we have done a very extensive work in hydroxychloroquine sulfate in type 2 diabetes. So already we are very much into diabetes. Barring insulin, rest others we are addressing. So when you see comprehensive, and now let's maybe later on, like in a total foot care, you need something for other things, for dressing they use alginate and all those things. Maybe later on we can plan. So ultimately the aim is save food, get every people aware about this, and at a very comprehensive treatment for diabetic foot ulcer.
So, one more, I mean, Sumit, so like, you know, when you said that this is a cardiac drug which was repurposed, so how did you get this idea, sir? Like, you know, is there any data that is available anywhere in the world? And also now that you've done the repurposing it, how many countries that you've patented? Because now this is open for anyone to, you know, do the repurposing, right?
Yeah. So, this reference of V-Life came in. So when I started V-Life, at that time the idea was to develop a software platform to fail the drug quickly. So basically, normally the cost of drugs is very high because the molecules fail very late in the trial, and all that failure cost is getting added to the successful drug. So idea with that particular technology was to fail the drug early. So we developed that technology, but there were no takers here in India because nobody was doing research in the first place. So we said that fine, we will use the technology ourselves and prove it. So that's where we started using our own developed technology, and through that we found that this particular drug, esmolol hydrochloride, binds to a protein target called aldose reductase, which is a pivotal protein in the aldose reductase pathway. So that is, it's a self-generated insight, I would say. There was no literature or any public domain information. That's why we could get patents. So we have got patents already granted in US, Europe, Japan, China, and any country that matters. So the worry that somebody would just make it is not going to happen.
So can you say this is a software simulated kind of
I would say that it is software ideated product. Not simulated, but ideated.
So these complications, one of which we are discussing today is the product for which is diabetic foot ulcer. So diabetes classically affects the smaller blood vessels, which is called as microvascular disease, and it affects the larger blood vessels, which are called as macrovascular complications. So these complications are, retinopathy, that they affects the vision. So it's a preventable cause of blindness. Then you have nephropathy, kidneys getting involved, and then neuropathy. So neuropathy is very, very common compared to the other complications. And neuropathy is one of the reasons for diabetic foot disease. The other part is, macrovascular disease. When we talk about, you have the coronary artery disease. So a type 2 diabetes patient is much more prone to heart disease, what we call it. He is also prone to cerebrovascular disease, meaning when the brain blood vessels are affected, it results into stroke or loss of one side is gone. So there is a paralysis of one part of the body. And then the third circulation is the peripheral circulation, which is peripheral vascular disease. So diabetic foot, there is a combination of peripheral arterial disease and also neuropathy. So these are the two things together which does things. And along with that, if the diabetes is neglected, then it becomes uncontrolled hyperglycemia. The glucose levels go down. So when the glucose is uncontrolled, the normal pathway for glucose metabolism, which takes place from glucose to ATP and it is converted into energy, that pathway is actually oversaturated. So glucose to glucose 6-phosphatase does not take place. So it goes with the alternate pathway, and in that pathway the glucose is diverted to sorbitol and fructose, which are harmful chemicals are generated, which technically we call it advanced glycosylation end products. So they will cause all the complications of diabetes. And this particular product is actually a beta blocker, cardioselective beta blocker, but was approved in 1986 for treatment of arrhythmia. Arrhythmia is where the heart beats abnormally, faster or things like that. So this product was approved. Intravenous drug was available in all the markets, including India, where it is used to treat arrhythmia and hypertension when the patient undergoes anesthesia, intubation is done. So that's the use of this product. But now it is repurposed for diabetic foot ulcer by doing molecular docking studies by Nova Leads, where they showed that it corrects the aldose reductase pathways where the glucose metabolism is directed to at the local level as well. So where it creates, blood circulation impairment and all that. So when you prevent this inhibition of aldose reductase pathway, you add in the ulcer healing. So this is very, very important. But it's important to remember that, not only the application of this this particular gel form at the feet level when the ulcer takes place, it is very important to address the peripheral circulation. So there are products to that, and IPCA has one product which also works there. And diabetes was initially considered just a glucose metabolism problem. It was just considered a metabolic disease. But as the science advances, your understanding also evolves. So then from metabolic disease, then it was found out that diabetes patients are more prone to heart disease. So it's not only metabolic, it is a vascular disease. So from that it came that diabetes is not just metabolic, it's metabolic also, vascular also. Then further understanding took place. Now the understanding is that diabetes is also low-grade inflammation. So there is a low-grade inflammation taking place, and that inflammation gives rise to progression of diabetes, complications of diabetes. So this is how the understanding has improved. And so there is a need to address this inflammation as well, which also can be done. So this is a comprehensive management is required. Control of blood sugar is very, very important. And this uncontrolled diabetes is creating all the complications which we are discussing, like diabetic kidney disease, retinopathy, retina involvement, and the peripheral arterial disease, peripheral neuropathy. So all these complications, a comprehensive management of all diabetes is required, along with the, of course, we have to take care of the ulcer, because diabetes are routinely told to inspect their feet regularly. So there is a lot of preventive advice also should be given while treating this particular disease. I think that's what I think of.
Already have a robust manufacturing facility in place, and we see that there is no demand supply gap which is going to be there at all. All the preparations are already on, product is ready, available now. Well, Novari Pharma is doing the manufacturing at a facility which we have loaned out.
In the state of Gujarat.
This licensing agreement with IPCA and Novari, like, what is this? Is it a revenue share or a profit share? Like,
Yes, sir.
Or is there any milestone payments?
Novari has spent large amount of money on research. So there is a licensing fees applicable, and some assistance also on initial part of approval. So we are close to almost around 13 crore we have paid to them for licensing. Thereafter, as the sales build up, there is also certain other milestone built up in the agreement, and at the same time they will also be getting royalties also on the product. So that is the reward they will get for their research work as per the part of agreement.
आजकल सर न्यू बेबी बोर्न होता है, उसको भी डायबिटीज़ होता है, तो वो क्या रीज़न है सर? और 100% में 99% लोगों को डायबिटीज़ आज की तारीख में बताया जा रहा है सर, डॉक्टर पारिक। तो सर इसका क्या रीज़न है? और 100% डायबिटीज़ ही हो ही रहा है सबको?
नहीं, 100% तो नहीं, मैंने वैसे बताया 27% of the Indian population has either pre-diabetes or diabetes, which is very high. Actually, what you are alluding to, the newborns and all that, that is actually basically genetically driven. So those are genetically driven diabetes, which you can do the chromosomal studies and find out which type of diabetes it is and how it is working. So that's one part. So major part is type 2 diabetes, almost close to 90-95%, and other 5 to 10% part in India. Fortunately, type 1 diabetes is not so high, but the incidence is increasing, where it is taking place juvenile. Earlier it used to be referred to as juvenile diabetes, where the beta cells of the pancreas are destroyed because of the autoimmunity. So this is autoimmune disease, where immunity is supposed to fight the outside infections and other things, but when immunity is directed towards its own cells, you get disease like rheumatoid arthritis, you get disease like type 1 diabetes or juvenile diabetes, where pancreatic beta cells are destroyed. So this is the type 1 diabetes. But the most worrying part is the type 2 diabetes, which is exploding in our country, and the genesis of that is actually also came out in the same ICMR study which came in which was published in the Lancet journal, where the most important part is that visceral adiposity, visceral or abdominal adiposity, and it was first it came in 1980s when I was working in Nair Hospital. At that time, this came in the journal that Indians who are there in UK and US or European countries and the US, as compared to Caucasians, their doctors found that Indians are more prone to diabetes. So it's a combination of genetically prone plus lifestyle. So lifestyle uncovers the diabetes. And they found that Indians were less obese than the Europeans. Indians were non-smokers more compared to the Europeans, but still Indians were getting heart disease early and diabetes also early in that in the NRI population. And they found that the obesity of the Indians is centered around the tummy. So it is called a central obesity. So the worrying part is that at that time when say 25-30 years ago, a cardiologist used to see just 2-3 patients of diabetes in his OPD. Now he is saying every second, third patient is diabetic. So so this has led to the emergence of a new specialty, cardiodiabetology. So this is where you have. So in the ICMR INTAP survey, where 27% of the Indians had impaired glucose metabolism or impaired glucose homeostasis, about 28% Indians are obese, and 40% Indians have abdominal obesity or central obesity, and this is linked to the generation of future development of type 2 diabetes. So this is the worrying part. Though we have 27% of glucose metabolism disturbance, but we have 40% Indians who are obese from the viscera. So Indians, the obesity is around the tummy, which is much harmful as compared to obesity which takes place in the hips. That is not that is found to be protective rather than harmful. So here, it is this is where we are worried. So we should prevent obesity, because this fatty tissue which is deposited in the pancreas, in the liver, it is called as ectopic fat from the fatty tissue to going to the organs. So this is responsible for fatty liver. So all these complications which are taking place, these are taking place due to visceral adiposity, and it is giving rise to inflammation, and that is why the need to address this inflammation is there, what I was referring.
So let's go with the evidence available in clinical phase 3, right? In phase 3, we have done the studies up to 12 weeks. Within 12 weeks, 60% of the ulcers got completely closed. So we would like to believe that within 12-week period, almost any patient who has to get a benefit would get. But then there is a second data that after 12 weeks, for further 12 weeks if we observe, an additional 12% patients got completely healed. So basically I would say that between 12 to 24 weeks is the period where almost anybody who has to get a benefit out of the drug would get it.
Sir, there is a question. I have a question about, is this the only drug available in the market? This is Nagesh from Healthcare Ideas. Because I remember a company from Pune, another company, I don't maybe it's the same company, V-Life had introduced a similar drug some 12-15 years ago.
Very fine. So we are V-Life also. So V-Life got merged into Novalid Pharma. So V-Life was first founded by me in 2002. Then I founded Novalid Pharma in 2008. V-Life got merged into Novalid Pharma. So you are thank you very much for remembering V-Life.
It's a real life.
It's real life.
So Anjali Singh this side from Business Standard. Coming back to the price point, and also are there plans to export?
In India, we launched at the prices, 10 gram is 1365 rupees, and it's depend upon the size of the wound that what is going to consume. So if you see the cost overall, it is not very costly as compared to what are the others. But I cannot compare with like betadine and all. So that's not a right comparison. That's that, and it's very easy. We are thinking future when patient can, if a patient come from a small place, get on the first dressing, later on can locally they can do this, because these type of patient transportation is very difficult. Thank you.
Now please understand that this is a patented drug, right? This is a prescription drug, so it is not freely exportable. This kind of drug has to get regulatory approval in every country where it has to be sold, right? So at this point in time, we are in the process of developing it also for US, Europe and other regulated markets. So once those regulatory approvals are available, then this drug will be available in those countries also. Till then, India, where we have already got the approval. Thank you.
बाद में होता ही होता है. Initial part, Indian population, the type 2 diabetes is predominantly insulin resistance. Okay. So insulin resistance meaning insulin is produced, but insulin is not acting. Okay, this is called as resistance. Resistance to action of the job of insulin is to put glucose inside the cells. So intracellularly, glucose has to move where it is required. So here, glucose is excess, but it is not going inside the cell. It is in the blood. So this is where you have to address that. So physical activity will improve your insulin sensitivity.
It has been converted into a topical gel for diabetic foot ulcer. A product like this has never ever come before from India. So the example of IPCA's earlier success with the inflammation drug is it's an oral drug applied in new indication as an oral drug. Here the drug was intravenous injection converted into a topical gel in a new disease area, thereby enabling the company to get global patents. So Novalid holds the global patents for this particular drug. This is probably the first of its kind in India. Of you, I'm representing Novalid Pharma. I'm the CEO and the founder of it. This particular drug, the importance of it can be understood from the fact that about 100,000 lower foot amputations happen every year in India. 80% of them are because of untreated diabetic foot ulcers. So this particular drug should be seen not merely as a as a gel, but as a savior of the foot of India. And we have got patents all over the world, including India, in US, Europe, Japan. We will be developing there also and saving some more feet there. So with the help of IPCA, I hope that this drug reaches everybody who needs it and the amputations are saved so that people's lives are not compromised. And more importantly, this is a quick acting drug actually. So within 12-week period, about 60% of wounds completely close. And in the follow-up period of another 3 months, about 70% plus wounds get completely closed. More importantly, the recurrence of the diabetic foot ulcers, which is a very, very common trend, is not observed in the wounds that are closed by Diulcus. So this is something which is the highlight of the product, and it's a topical gel, very easy to use, and it is a significant
because we are launching a very innovative product today for addressing unmet need in the market. Diabetic foot ulcer is a very big problem. India is a diabetic capital. You all know in the world that India has a large amount of diabetic population, almost more than 10 crore. And more than that is a pre-diabetic population in the country. And large number of those diabetic patients, maybe around 10% of that, suffers from diabetic foot ulcer. And it's very, very difficult to treat. Currently, there are no medications available for treatment of diabetic foot ulcer. It's all today done is infection management and management of disease, supportive therapies. There is no main therapy available for treatment of diabetic foot ulcer. Novalid Pharma is a Pune-based startup. They have done the work in the field of diabetic foot ulcer, and they have repurposed a cardiovascular drug for the purpose of treatment of diabetic foot ulcer. So over an extensive period of work and thereafter clinical trial in the country, phase 3 clinical trial were done in the country at a very good centers like PGI Chandigarh was one of them. At Pune there is a Chelaram Institute of Diabetes is there. At Bangalore there is a MS Ramaiah Institute is there, and at Bangalore also one of the top hospitals, those kind of work is done on clinical work by the top end endocrinologists. They have done the work on this, and this clinical trial is one which is published